The players will feel somatic anxiety as they are getting ready to play the game, elevating their heart rate. The trait and state anxiety. State anxiety describes the experience of unpleasant feelings when confronted with specific situations, demands, or a particular object or event. State anxiety arises when the person makes a mental assessment of some type of threat. It is a short-term mood state that can change frequently. When the object or situation that is perceived as threatening goes away, the person no longer experiences anxiety. Thus, state anxiety refers to a short-term condition in response to some perceived threat. Trait anxiety arises in response to a perceived threat, but it differs in its intensity, duration, and the range of situations in which it occurs, depending on the personality of the athlete. Trait anxiety refers to the difference between people in terms of their tendency to experience state anxiety in response to the anticipation of the threat. People with a high level of trait anxiety experience more intense degrees of state anxiety to specific situations than most people do, and experience anxiety towards a broader range of simulations, situations, or objects than most people. Thus, trait anxiety describes a personality characteristic rather than a temporary feeling. In sport, an athlete with high trait anxiety would worry about competing in high-level competition, fearing that they will fail or make mistakes. In contrast, an athlete with low trait anxiety, for example Usain Bolt, displays relaxed body language even in high-pressure competitions such as the Olympic finals. Anxiety impacts on performance. The impacts on sporting performance often come from anxiety. For example, the type of task that is involved may provide anxiety. The performer may not be confident performing that sporting action or technique, such as complex techniques such as backhand in tennis. Another form of anxiety may be a fear of failing, like missing a penalty in a penalty shootout in a football final. Fear of evaluation and criticism from others, including the crowd, will add anxiety to some athletes. In a high-level competition with many onlookers, there may be increased anxiety about what gets reported about the performance, e.g., international footballers face multinational criticism on many platforms. A fear of competition importance. For example, if you are playing in a semi-final, the performer might feel anxiety due to him not wanting to fail in the semi-final and let his team down. Fear of injury can be an anxiety towards the end of the season. Players may prefer to rest in unimportant games to reduce the risk of injury and save themselves for more important games. Other elements that you can't control, like the referees may also add anxiety. If a player doubts a referee, they are not concentrating fully on the game, and their anxiety will impact poorly on their performance. The anxiety affects the performers negatively, as it will result in the performer forcing more mistakes and rushing each skill, causing the opposition to release their nerves and anxiety, then adding more pressure to them, resulting in more mistakes. However, it could be seen as a positive, as the performer with more nerves may not take the risky option. For example, in basketball, someone who has a high anxiety might not throw a risky pass over the top of defenders, thinking it will be intercepted, so makes the much easier pass to his teammates running next to him, allowing him to score. Management techniques and limitations. Managing techniques. Controlled breathing. Deep breathing techniques slow your breathing rate and calm your body. It helps to relieve stress. The mind focuses on the regular breathing and not the stressful situation. Imagery can be used to help an athlete imagine themselves in a calm situation where they are in control and not far from the anxiety situation to help them relax and focus. It can be a mental rehearsal or creative imagery. External imagery is when the athlete pictures themselves performing the task perfectly. For example, a tennis player may picture an ace serve, including where the ball lands, to help focus them bearings when serving. However, a drawback of this technique is that the athlete must be a skilled and experienced performer to imagine a correct technique. Internal imagery is the mental rehearsal of skills focusing on specific elements of the skill. For example, a golf swing can be mentally rehearsed without including other players, because golf is mainly an individual sport. Mental rehearsal is valuable because it stimulates the nervous system and muscles used in the real action. A sporting example is the British long-distance runner Mo Farah, who practices his technique continuously before, during, and after an event, practicing his breathing techniques routinely to enable him take in as much air as possible when running. Thought stopping. Thought stopping simply stops an athlete thinking any negative thoughts. This is easier and more effective if the athlete's character is more confident and extroverted. Introverts find it more difficult. An athlete can use this technique before a big match. An example is professional athletes competing in the World Championships against an athlete who is currently world record holder. Positive self-talk. Positive self-talk is when the athlete reinforces their ability by talking to himself. It is common in tennis before serving or receiving a serve. For example, Andy Murray will use this technique after a loss point or a ineffective shot to help him maintain confidence. Progressive muscular relaxation. Progressive muscular relaxation is a technique that uses the contracting of muscles and then relaxing of them to relax the body. However, this technique takes time and practice and is more effective alongside deep breathing techniques. Limitations. Limitations are the time it takes to learn the performer the technique to be effective. It also depends of the level of athlete. Beginners cannot imagine the perfect ace in tennis. For example, personality types are more suited to some techniques. For example, self-talking only works if it suits the athlete's personality and gives them motivation. What is stress? Stress is a psychological state produced by perceived physiological and psychological forces. There are three concepts of stress. Stressor, this is when the environment changes, causing stress to increase. Stress response, this is how the response to the stimulation that caused the stress to increase. Stress experience, this is how we deal with the stress situation. Types of stress. Eustress. Eustress is a positive form of stress which gives you a feeling of fulfillment. Athletes like this kind of stress as it changes them, helping to improve their skill levels. Increases their focus and concentration levels. This improves the intrinsic motivation, which is a benefit for the athletes. There are 4 stages of eustress. Stage 1, this is the demand of the sport. For example, the finals for the 100 meters front stroke in swimming or the last round in boxing. Stage 2, this is the perception of the demand. This is a positive perception when the athlete sees it as a challenge that they have to overcome. Stage 3, this is when the increase in arousal levels reach the optimal point, enabling performance levels to increase as there is an increase in energy levels and motivation. Stage 4, this is the outcomes resulting from eustress, which is an increased performance level. Distress. Distress is a negative form of stress causing form of anxiety, nervousness, apprehensive or worry as a result of perceived inability to meet the demands of the performance. The stages of distress are: Stage 1, like eustress, this is the demand of the sport, for example, free throws in basketball or a penalty in football. Stage 2, this is the negative perception of the demand and the athlete sees this situation as a threat. Stage 3, this increases the level of arousal, however, it over-arouses the performer. This can result in aggression, meaning the performer gets a punishment from it. Stage 4, this is the outcomes of distress, which is decreased in performance levels, which can demotivate the athlete. Causes of stress. Internal causes of stress are when you are causing the stress